Hey 11s, I hope the quiz went well. Just thought I'd make a quick video so that just in case you were uncertain about how to do this. We did start it on last week, so we'll finish it off today and hopefully it will make sense. So what we really want to do is we just want to look at quadratics in different forms. So sometimes you're given quadratics in vertex forms and you can graph them and state all the information about the vertex using the vertex. And then other times you're given quadratics in standard form or in factored form and you still need to figure out the vertex, etc. So if we're given something in standard form, we can figure out the vertex in a couple of ways. One, we can complete the square and then it'll be in vertex form, or we could actually factor it and figure out what the x-intercepts are and then use them to determine the vertex. And that's what we're going to do here today. So we're going to take this expression 6x squared minus 7x minus 3 and we're going to factor it and figure out what the x-intercepts are. So in order to do that, as you remember, so we have 6x squared minus 7x minus 3 and we want to figure out two factors of 6x squared and two factors of 3. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that down. 6x squared minus 7x minus 3, and I'm going to count with my two factors of 6, so 2x and 3x, and then my factors of 3 are 1 and 3. And so I'm going to test those both out. So 2x times 1 is equal to 2x, and 3x times 3 is equal to 9x. And so if I do 2x subtract 9x, I'll get that negative 7x, so they're going to work. So I'm going to take these two terms and put them in my bracket. So I have 2x and I have 3x. And my 2x is being multiplied by 1, so I'm going to put that in this bracket. And my 3x is being multiplied by 3, so I'm going to put that in the opposite bracket because then 3x is multiplied by 3. And then because I am my 9x is what has to be negative, then I need this 3 to be negative and my 1 is positive, and so now it's factored. So that's great, it's factored, but the next thing I need to do is I need to figure out the x-intercepts, and the x-intercepts exist where y is 0. So I've replaced y with 0, and now I have two factors, and both of those factors I want to figure out when they're equal to 0. So if you hopefully got this right on the quiz, but we're going to set 2x minus 3 equal to 0 to figure out one of the factors, and 3x plus 1 equal to 0 to figure out the other factor. And then we're going to solve. So we're going to move the 3 to the other side, so we get 2x equals positive 3. And then we're going to move the 2 to the other side, and remember when you move it across you do opposite operations, so it's going to be 3 divided by 2. And that's one of our x-intercepts. So one of our x-intercepts is at 3/2 and 0. Now to figure out the other one. So again, we're going to move the 1 to the other side. So when we do that, we have opposite operations, so we're subtracting 1. And then we're going to move the 3 to the other side, and so when we do that, we have opposite operations, so we're dividing by 3. So my other x-intercept is going to be at negative 1/3 and 0. So I have my x-intercepts. So now what I want to do is I want to actually figure out what the x value of the vertex is. And hopefully you remember that the x value of the vertex is going to be halfway between the x-intercepts. And so to find it, anytime you want to find the halfway point, you just add up the two numbers and divide by 2. It's like when you want to calculate your average of like 2 marks, you just add them up and divide by 2. So you take each of the x-intercepts, add them, and divide by 2. So in this case, we have 3/2. And to that, we're going to add negative 1/3. So I'm going to put that in brackets because it's negative. And all of that is going to be over 2. Well, I'm going to tell you to stop panicking right now because we're actually going to use our trusty little calculators to do the math for us, okay? So let's see if we can see what we're going to do here. So here's the calculator. There's this lovely button on the calculator right here, the ABC button. And that button, and hopefully it exists on all your calculators, will actually do the fractional math for you without you having to worry about finding common denominators and multiplying by reciprocals and all that kind of stuff. So I just want to show you how to use it. So first we're going to do 3/2. So in order to use it, you would press 3. and then you would press this fraction button, and then you would press 2. And so now you see up here, that is 3 halves. And to that, we're going to add, and then I'm going to put in brackets because it's a negative. So I'm going to do -1. So my negative button is right here. So I'm going to do -1. And now I'm going to hit that fraction button again. And I'm going to do 3. And I'm going to close my bracket and hit equals. Well, now I have a fraction, but it's not in the form that I want. It's 1 1/6. So if I want to convert it to the form that I want, you'll see above the ABC button there's a DC, and it's in yellow, and up here I have a shift and it's in yellow. So if I press shift and DC, it now converts it to 7/6. Okay, so I now have 7/6, and that is my numerator, and I want to take that 7/6 and I want to divide it by 2, because that was my expression right here. So right now I have 7/6 all over 2. And so when I plug that into the calculator, I have the 7/6. I'm just going to hit divide and 2, and now it tells me that my final answer is 7/12. And so I've done all of that with the aid of my calculator. So now I know that the x value of the vertex is equal to 7/12. So my axis of symmetry is x equals 7/12. All right, moving on. So the y value of the vertex. The y value of the vertex you're going to get by substituting 7/12 in for x back into your original equation. So our original function is y equals 6x squared minus 7x minus 3. And in this case, x is going to be 7/12. So we're going to replace x with 7/12. And then it's going to be squared, subtract 7, and we're going to replace x with 7/12, and then subtract 3. And once again, I'm going to let my calculator do all the work for me. So I'm going to bring the calculator in. Whoops, so I can actually see the function. All right, so I'm going to do 6 times, and then I'm going to do 7, hit the ABC button, and 12. And then I'm going to square it. Yes. Then I'm going to subtract 7 times and 7 and the ABC button over 12, and then I'm going to subtract 3. And I actually did that all wrong, so I'm going to take you back through that. I'm going to take the 6, I'm going to do bracket, and then I'm going to do 7 ABC over 12, close the bracket, and then hit the squared. Okay, then I'm going to subtract 7, open my bracket, and do 7, the ABC button over 12, and then I'm going to subtract 3. And so when I do this, again, it's in the wrong form. So to get it into the right form, I'm just going to hit shift, and then I'm going to hit the ABC button one more time. And so now I get negative 121 over 24. So my vertex then is going to be 7/12 and negative 121 over 24. So the last thing I want to do is find my y-intercept. My y-intercept I can get in one of two ways. I can either set x equal to 0 and solve, right? Or I can just remember that whenever I have a function in standard form, my x-intercept is always going to be the constant on the right. So I have y equals 6x squared minus 7x minus 3. And this number right here, the constant, is going to be my y-intercept. So it is going to be when x is 0, y is going to be 3. The other way I could have done that was just simply substituted 0 for x squared and plugged all that in my calculator. And I would have ended up with minus 3. So my y-intercept is 0 and negative 3. So now what I want to do is I now want to graph it. So I'm going to turn my paper over, okay, and I'm going to sketch a graph and label all the features that I found. So I'm just going to write them here first. I have 3 halves and 0 as my x-intercepts, negative 1/3 and 0. My y-intercept is 0 and negative 3, and my vertex is at 7 over 12 and negative 121 over 24. So I'm going to go ahead and graph all of those points. So 3/2 is the same. If I put that in the calculator, that's equal to 1.5. So I'm going to go here to 1.5, and I'm going to plot that point. And then I'm going to label it 3/2 and 0. Then I'm going to go to my other plane, which is negative 1/3. 1/3 is just before, it works out to negative 0.3333. So obviously it's going to be just a little bit before negative 0.5. So I'm going to plot my point, and I'm going to label it negative 1/3 and 0. Then I'm going to plot my y-intercept. So my y-intercept is at 0 and negative 3. So I'm going to go ahead and put that here and then label it 0 and negative 3. And so lastly, I'm going to plot my vertex. Well, my vertex is at 7/12. 7/12 is approximately 0.56. So the x value of the vertex is going to be somewhere around here. And then the y value is negative 121 divided by 24, which is approximately negative 5.04. So my y value is going to be right around here. Well, where do they meet? They meet about here. So this is my vertex. I'm going to go ahead and label that. So it's 7 over 12 and at negative 121 over 24. And then I can go ahead and sketch my function. So it's going to look something, oh boy, like this, right, where it continues up forever. And then I can label it y equals 6x squared minus 7x minus 3, and I am done. So question number 2 says, determine the equation of the following function and then determine the intervals for which it is increasing and decreasing. So let's do the second half part first. So it says determine the equations or determine the intervals for which it's increasing or decreasing. And all it's asking is, if I'm like looking at this function and I'm reading it from left to right now, and I follow it this way, well, right now, as I'm heading this way, my y values are getting smaller. Right? And now all of a sudden I get to here, and now all of a sudden, as I keep going, my y values start to get bigger again. Okay? So when the y coordinates are getting smaller, we say that it is decreasing. And when the y coordinates are getting bigger, we say that it is increasing. And we just need to tell it when that's happening. So if we look at this function, if we start out here at negative infinity, it's going to keep getting, the y values keep getting smaller until we get to this x value of negative 5. So we say that it's decreasing when x is less than 5. So it decreases when x is less than negative 5. And then after negative 5, my x values start increasing again, and they'll continue increasing forever, so until infinity. So we're going to say that it increases as x is, or when x is larger than 5. So as x or negative 5, I apologize. So as x is larger than negative 5, so as you keep reading it from left to right, it's going to increase. So that's increasing and decreasing. And notice we don't have equals negative 5, because at this point it is no longer increasing or decreasing, it's actually changing direction. And so the point in which it changes direction like that, we don't say that it increases or decreases at that point. So now let's look at finding the equation of this parabola. And again, it's very similar to when we found it in vertex form. We want to use the information we've been given. So we've been given the x-intercepts, and we've also been given the vertex. So I'm going to use the x-intercepts to find the equation of this parabola. So if the x-intercept is negative 7, that means the factor is x plus 7. And if the x-intercept is negative 3, that means the factor is x plus 3. There is some kind of stretch or compression, which we don't know at this point. And then we have y. So y is going to equal a times x plus 7 and x plus 3. Well, here we have another point. We have this point, -5 and -2. So we know that -5 is equal to x, and we know that -2 is equal to y. So I'm going to use this point for x and y so that I can solve for a. So I'm going to replace y with -2, and I'm going to replace a with -5. And then I'm going to solve. So I've got -2 equals a, -5 plus 7 is 2, -5 plus 3 is -2. So now I have -2 equals a times -4. And at this point, a is the thing that I most care about what it is. So I'm going to move the -4 across the equal sign, and I have -2 divided by -4 equals a. And so a reduces to 1/2. So therefore, my equation is y equals 1/2 times x plus 7 times x plus 3. And I'm done. So now you need to do your homework, which will just give you some practice with those questions. And make sure you try the extend question on page 163. And I will see you all on Thursday.